Having this YouTube channel has helped me a lot with my sewing skills because it makes me learn. I always say that, and it is true. Because before I didn't have time for sewing, I didn't make myself come to sew, and it was only for special occasions that I sew a dress or something like that. But having it, it's really good because I come every day to sew. And one thing that has helped me an awful lot is all the little pieces of advice you've given me down in the comments. Anything from sewing organization, or how to keep your machines, or different books to buy and read, or how to sew something and different techniques. Everything helps. And last year I made a video about different tips and tricks I use here to make sewing a bit easier that worked for me, and I wanted to share it with you. And because I have a few more to share with you, I thought it would be a great idea to share your own comments so everyone can make use of those great tips. Take into account that I have a Spanish channel, so the tips are mainly from the Spanish viewers. So with no order in particular, let's go ahead. A few weeks ago I did a video about cleaning and organizing the sewing room because mine was a mess. It only lasted like that for 2 days, but well, I had to do it. There were a few interesting comments in that video, but two of them really caught my eye. One from Ana Gabriela Soprano, who told me that she sorts out her fabrics by color or by season. This is really interesting because by season, if you are in whatever season you are, you just have to have a look in that drawer or box. So that's really good. And by color, it's also interesting because maybe you need something in a particular color. So that's also good as well. Right now I have my fabric sorted out by normal fabric and upholstery fabric. And that works for me, so you let me know what you do. And the other one was by Diana Marroquin, who told me that she puts all her batting into a vacuum bag. That's really good. Mind-blowing. It takes the whole sewing room, so that's a way to keep it a bit contained, which is great. Another interesting tip from Maruke-san in the video I did about my scissors collection is that you must grease your cutting mat. I've never heard of that, but apparently it's quite good because it gets rid of all the lines when cutting. And then of course you have to clean it so you have no residues, but apparently it works. When I did the video about how to measure yourself, there was a really interesting comment by Georgia Slacky, who said that in order to be able to measure yourself easily, one way to not lose your waist measurement is to just tie some ribbon. If you had that already marked, it's really easy to get your measurements because you're not thinking all the time, oh, where's my waist? Is it a bit upper? Is it lower? Where is it? I've lost it. So that way, it's always there and you can easily take your measurements with no worries. When I did a video about how to clean your sewing machine, I said that you can even blow to get rid of the dust, but apparently Matthias Berlan told me that it's really bad because if you blow, maybe all the dust goes inner in the machine, in the engine, so that's even worse. So no blowing at all, just using a little brush to get rid of the dust. I've had a few fails with skirts and the waistbands. One of them, the one I did, the gambit skirt one, I didn't interface the waistband, and the other I did that was tragedy in the sewing room because I ended up cutting by mistake. I interfaced it way too much. And there were two comments that helped me because they explain how to use the interface, and it is that you should only use it on half your waistband. not even in the seam allowance, just on one of the faces. And this is really good because that way it's not that bulky when you're sewing and not as hard, it doesn't feel as hard when you're wearing it. And both comments were by Isa MH and Marisa Soler. When I did a video about how to do a princess seam from scratch, I learned a lot, and Sonia Serrano let me know a few things that were really interesting. The first one is that the princess seams come right in the middle of the armhole area. When I did mine, it wasn't quite in the middle but a bit lower, so it wrinkles a little when I put my arm down. But it's really good to know for next time. And the other one is that the difference between your front panel and your back panel is the bastard. This blew my mind, and when I thought about it, it seemed really logical, because if you think about it, when you measure yourself, you measure on top of your chest, and the back hasn't got a chest, so it's lower, it's smaller, shorter. So that difference, which is the bust, is what you add to the bastard, which is really good. It's really logical, but on your own you don't get to those conclusions. And of course, a few tips of my own. I did this a few weeks ago and I'm in love with it, and it is to glue a measuring tape on the side of your cutting table. It is really good. I think it's really useful because you just come here and just measure your fabric in a fast way. I remember seeing antique haberdashery counters with the measuring tape on top, and I think it's beautiful. I would love to have one, of course, we all would, but I think this is a good solution for that. Another thing I've seen a few times, and I know it works, is that when you have some material that sticks, like leather or something like wool, you can use some of your pattern paper to make it a bit more slippery when sewed, so it doesn't stick to your foot. When I did the cushions video a few weeks ago for my baby's room, well, not for him, but for me when I sit there to wait for him to go to sleep, is that I used a different method to sew the zipper. Instead of sewing one side of the zipper and then the other, what I did was to sew the panel normally, that side, like no zipper was going in, then opening the seam, putting the zipper in the middle and sewing the sides. That way, when you open that center seam, the zipper is perfectly centered, perfectly sewn and stitched, and you don't have to worry at all. It's an extra step, but it's really easy to do. Another thing I do is that I keep my patterns in a folder but in envelopes, so that way I don't mix them or confuse them with others. And of course, there are little tips that are always in our minds, like for example, to keep our paper scissors away from the fabric scissors. That way you don't ruin your good ones. And my last tip is to have spare stuff. If you go to the haberdashery, get a few zips instead of only one, and that way you always have one in case you need it. There's nothing worse to start a project and realize you have to go out to the haberdashery instead of finishing it right away. So have a lot of stuff, it doesn't matter. So I hope you've enjoyed this little video about all the tips you have given me, and I hope you still do it. I hope you go on giving tips of advice so everyone can learn a lot like me. I really appreciate your comments, so please don't stop. I have a lot more tips you've given me, but I chose the more general ones. There are more specific ones about how to sew a specific fabric or a specific seam, so those we can review another time. So thank you so much for coming with me for a while, I really appreciate it, and don't forget to subscribe, it's free and that way you don't miss anything next week. Bye!